Hello and welcome to the Corn Nation Overreaction. Along with my co-host Haas Reuter, I'm Greg Mahachko, and this time around, this go around, we have the honor and privilege of talking about Nebraska's 45-7 loss at home to number 2 Michigan. Before we jump into it wasn't a whole lot of good. There was a little bit of bad and quite a bit of ugly. Haas, we're 5 games in. How you doing?
We're 2-3, and Michigan was always going to be a loss from the second the schedule came out. They rework it in 22 after the COVID, everything, they had to get back into alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan was always going to be a loss, no matter what. Didn't matter how badly we wanted it, and that's a very pointed remark at Steve Sipple's column about, we didn't want it enough. It didn't matter about the want to. It didn't matter what schemes we dialed up. We were simply outgunned in every definition of the word. Like, we got mauled because we don't have the dudes. So Michigan, that loss, I can excuse it. Don't like it, but I can excuse it.
I want to piggyback on, and I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but that's exactly what I did. It was when I watched that game, and I thought, especially as it went on, like, okay, this defense isn't getting any stops, offense isn't getting any headway. This is just a situation of being outplayed by, I go back to D2, the Mighty Ducks, when Aberman's talking about Iceland, and he says they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, they have more facial hair. I mean, like, that's
Michigan.
That was what this past Saturday was. And look, they come in quite heralded again, number 2 team in the land, and it was very difficult to find any spaces, any gaps, any weaknesses in their armor. Very solid football team.
Yeah, I think this team might beat Georgia in the playoff. I think this is the year that they're going to do it. That's a good football team. And
because Georgia hasn't looked as good as they have in the past.
No, they haven't. And I think Michigan's probably the best team in the country right now. That doesn't affect us, and that's a month and a half down the road. Let's not talk about the game. Let's talk about this game. From the beginning, I mean, things just started to go sideways. We let them off the hook on some 3rd and shorts, on some 4th and shorts, but you kind of got the feeling that Michigan was going to impose their will because they could. Yeah, when they're running the same schemes over and over again, very simple schemes, they're just relying on their physical advantage. And, let's call it what it is. It's a talent advantage. That's what's Harbaugh in his 9th year at Michigan, I think, 9th year. He's steadily recruited to a system. He's steadily recruited to a culture. That culture has been strong. He hit that little downturn from, in 2017, then again in 2019, 2020, and then they came out of it. He got better. He continued to work. So us going up against basically 9 years of progress, and we're only 4 games into the Matt Rule era, that result is about what it should be expected in that case. Because when you look at it, there is nothing on this team right now that suggests that we could go toe-to-toe or even have a close game with Michigan. The roster is pretty devoid of talent in the upperclassmen ranks. There's a lot of lowerclassmen who look promising. I think this freshman class, there's going to be a lot of really good football players in it. But Scott Frost absolutely cratered this program. And I think that needs to be said, more than it is, because there seems to be this, just didn't work out. But then a lot of vitriol is aimed towards Bill Callahan and Mike Riley. Well, guess what? Bill Callahan and Mike Riley, they left the program in better hands than they found it. Bill Callahan left a fully stocked roster for Bo to step in and have immediate success. If Bo doesn't micromanage his offensive coordinators and we avoid some injury issues, probably playing for a national championship in 2009 and 2010. If he cashes in on the success of Ndamukong Suh in recruiting defensive linemen, we'll probably have a lot better defenses in 11, 12, 13, and 14. Mike Riley left a fully stocked cupboard on offense for Scott Frost. Scott Frost didn't leave behind one single fucking thing.
No,
it got torn down to the studs through his own ineffectual coaching, through his own just sheer ignorance of addressing key concerns and personnel, in establishing a strong culture where people wanted to stick around. I mean, this thing, like, it can't be said enough. And I want to say it because I think that there's still some people who think that it's shame it didn't work out. Scott Frost absolutely destroyed this football program. Okay. It was already on life support. It was already declining steadily. He was the final death blow. Plunged the dagger into the program's back. And the fact that we have people like Steve Sipple writing columns suggesting Michigan just wanted it more when there was nothing of the sort for other coaches like Frost when we got beat by Michigan 2018 56-10 and only had 132 yards of total offense. No such article. But there is 4 games into the Matt Rule era. It's ridiculous. I don't mean to go on a soapbox there, but it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I want to talk about that because we collectively, Husker Media, Husker fan podcasts, etc., gave Frost. I mean, first of all, we gave him an exhaustible amount of leash, and
he should have been fired after 2020.
Well, let me finish my thought here. When he came in and he said, "Oh, gosh, the perception, both from what he alluded to and then what we all ran with, was that Mike Riley left the cupboard pretty bare."
No, not at all.
I mean, but that's what the narrative was for 2018, 2019, is he had to build everything back up. Now, obviously, that didn't happen, and the talent.
It's not too bad when you inherit. Sorry to interrupt, but it's not too bad when you inherit Stanley Morgan, J.D. Spielman, Jack Stoll, Divino Zigbo, Brendan Hymas, Matt Farniak, guys who were either on NFL rosters or spent time on NFL rosters. Maybe
probably Will Farniak too, right?
I'm not sure. He inherited Will Farniak too. That's right. I don't know about his future after he transferred to Tulsa, what transpired. Right. But, there was some serious talent there that was left behind. Austin Allen, was a Riley guy as well. There's nothing on this offense. We are fielding an offense that I'm not so sure that some high-level FCS defenses couldn't slow down because we just don't have the athletes.
And it doesn't help that we lost 2 guys for the season, Ramir Johnson, Gabe Irvin Jr.
Yeah.
That being said, we've got a quarterback situation that I think is muddier now than it was 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And I want to talk about that because that seemed to be the what the commentators and what replays and watching live seem to show. Heinrich Haarberg, we have to do something about his throwing motion. The sidearm 45-degree stuff. That's why so many that's why so many balls are being batted down, or as we saw in I think his first pass on Saturday, being tipped up in the air and up for grabs for defensive linemen to come away with an interception. Something has to give. He's 6'4", maybe a hair taller, right? I mean, if he
4'6'5",
if he has a true overarm throwing motion, you can alleviate a lot of those issues.
Yeah, and I think what you said, the quarterback position being even murkier, it's evident that Heinrich Haarberg was able to step in admirably through Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. And Michigan, I'm not going to put a lot at his feet on this because of the fact that it's Michigan, as we described. That loss, you could play that game 100 times with the current rosters, and Michigan's going to win probably 100 times. But I think this game really showed that we're going to need Jeff Sims moving forward this year as well. And hopefully some time on the bench, can get his mind right in addition to getting 100% healthy from the ankle injury. But I think that I'm trying to think of the correct way to word this. I think that no matter what happens moving forward with whoever is at quarterback in this offense, I think that you have to embrace the fact that you're going to have a quarterback-centric running game, very heavy quarterback-centric running game, like we talked about last week. And it looked like against Michigan, that just wasn't in the cards, honestly, because I think that they were able to contain it. And I think we probably were looking, hey, let's not subject our quarterbacks to too many hits against these guys.
No, that's fair. And that was a fear going into it, which we talked about, is the Michigan had the athletes to be able to take away the option game because they can set the edge on the outside, but they can also put a linebacker on the quarterback to spy, and really rendered the quarterback run game, I was going to say ineffectual, but the other words that came were impotent and flaccid. So it just,
Yikes.
I mean, we go from, he had, I think pronouns pal, Heinrich Haarberg had over 100 yards rushing in the game against Louisiana Tech, and
about 98 against Northern Illinois.
Yep, and he had -2 yards rushing against Michigan. The leading rusher for Nebraska was Josh Fleeks, and he had 1 carry for 74. It mattered. I mean, look, in the grand scheme of the game, no, it didn't matter. But it kept Nebraska from being shut out, which would have been the first home shutout since 1968, 66, something like that. I mean, just
I think it was 66. I think my dad mentioned he was at that game in 68 when he was 10 years old.
Oh gosh,
Kansas State, I think.
I mean, Nebraska could not run the ball, which is a shame because coming into the game they were, in among the top 10 for rushing, and at the same time they couldn't stop the run.
No, and that's going to get you beat a lot in the Big Ten, not being able to run the ball or stop the run.
Let's look at Heinrich. I didn't mean it. His passing numbers were 14 of 25 and 1 interception for 199 yards. He was sacked 4 times. Meanwhile, on the other side of the thing, J.J. McCarthy went 12 of 16 for 156 yards, 2 touchdowns. And they also had 3 other quarterbacks play for a combined 4 out of 7 for another, 31 yards, but a touchdown. I mean, come on. It was a frustrating game all the way around. We should have expected it. I'm still one of those, the eternal optimist. But even when I was like, we're down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter.
I thought about it, trust me. I was like, well, yeah,
I even tweeted after Michigan scored the second time or X'd or whatever the hell that you're supposed to,
we're too old. We're too old.
That's right. I'm old and stuck in my ways. But I said, you know what? If Michigan only scores these 14 points, then Nebraska still has a chance, right? That ended up not being the case. But
hope springs eternal.
Always. And you know what? We'll come back this week on the road at Illinois, and I'll drink the Kool-Aid once again.
Yeah,
and
I already know. It's like, this is a very crude analogy, and I'm going to say this analogy with a disclaimer attached to the front of it, okay? I have never done illicit drugs. Ever. Okay?
Except being a Nebraska fan.
Well, that's kind of the analogy here. Being a Husker fan must be like what being a heroin addict is. Background psychology, I've read the, DSM, Diagnostic statistical manuals, DSM-5 statistical service manual. They're interchangeable. And the hallmarks of addiction are the same thing for Husker football as it is for something like heroin. We know it's bad for us. And yet we're still bringing ourselves right back every freaking Saturday. I'll be pumped for Friday night against Illinois. And it's even worse when we're in November and we're playing teams, like let's say Wisconsin, Iowa. I would be, thinking how we're going to beat Wisconsin. Be thinking how we're going to notch a road win at Michigan State. I will go back to the well, even though I know it's bad for my health. Being a Husker fan, let's just face it, everybody. Being a Husker fan is bad for our health right now.
There are definitely more productive ways to, spend your Saturday afternoon.
I don't know what those are.
Saturday, I was locked into the game. Sunday, I went out and dug up 2 small trees and a bunch of invasive grass. And I paid. I'm old, and I got bad every time. Like I'm stomping down on my shovel, like it just shook my leg, and like just it's bone on bone on my knee. So none of that was fun. But I gotta say that I got this anecdote. So it's hot, and so it's like 90 degrees. Get in, the shirt is soaked in sweat, so I just took it off, put it in the washing machine. And my boy, my oldest, who was out there helping me, he's like, "Dad." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You look like you lost a lot of weight out there." Because I'm a bigger guy. And I said, "Buddy, if that were the case, I'd go out there for another 3 hours and do that." It was – no. Speaking of the heat, this was the thing that they were talking about. Huskers.com and Nebraska's social media was saying, hey, you can bring one, closed container of non-alcoholic beverage in because of the heat. The write-up for the story said that the temperature at kickoff was 93 degrees and matched the hottest at game time since inside Memorial Stadium since 1985. That doesn't seem like that could be the case. Like
I thought the same thing because there was a season opener against Wyoming in 2013 that I'm pretty sure it was upper 90s. It was above 93.
I mean, we've had hotter days than the last day of September. You would think that some of those late August games would be hitting almost triple digits, but like, look, both teams had to play in it. I'm definitely not using that as an excuse. It's just odd that it was, highlighted as it's been the hottest, game at kickoff in Memorial Stadium in almost 40 years. That's like, it just didn't seem to make sense to me.
No, it didn't make sense to me either, especially because like I know that there's been games that are hotter.
Talking about, we talked about personnel on the offensive side who were out. On the defensive side, we were without Lenhart. Luke Reimer, and then we lost very early on in the game. And we were already Deshaun Siegel, but we were all already again without Dwight Boodle as well. So I mean, man, I'm not saying that 100% healthy Nebraska beats Michigan. I'm saying it probably would have been a little closer, right? I mean, if we had Luke Reimer, who's been a very reliable tackler for, if we had Gabe Ervin Jr., who, and if we had all of our weapons, this is me being optimistic.
I know, and I don't want to throw cold water on it, but I'm going to. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. It
could have been closer, right? I mean, instead of a 38-point differential?
No, I think it would have been about the same. I think Michigan is that far ahead of us right now.
Well, let me ask you this question then, because everybody's going to want to know. How do we level up?
It's going to take probably 2-3 years, if not longer. I mean, when you're talking about this being a rebuild, it is truly a rebuild in every definition of the word. You got to rebuild the personnel. I know everybody hates hearing the rebuild culture. Frost turned that into such a buzzword jargon term in 2018 as well, but it is true. But that's one area that I think Rule has done a really nice job in, rebuilding the culture in short order. We just have to get players developed, and whether that's on the offensive line, at the quarterback position, at the receiver position, at running back, whether that's on defense. I like where our defense is at, but you got to continue to develop guys. And so I think that and this goes into a topic that I think is something that probably needs to be discussed at some point. If we can get to 6-6 with what we have to work with right now, that will be a miracle. And and here's the thing, not like we're so bad it'll be a miracle. I'm just talking like that would be a great thing for this roster, for this program right now, to go 6-6 to get to a bowl game. It is doable with the nature of the Big Ten West. It is doable with the fact that we have a defense that we're not going to see another Michigan the rest of the year. We are not, So we could be in every game moving forward. Now, the reason why I say that we need to look at 6-6 as being such a big deal is we have this tendency as a fan base where when we're really bad, we fire a coach. In the first offseason, we have really low expectations. Then what happens is that as that season starts creeping closer and closer, our expectations start going up. They start creeping up as well. We start talking ourselves into 8, 9, 10 wins. What if this is like Bob Stoops at Oklahoma coming in immediately? I'm not singling you out, Greg.
I feel attacked.
No, not at all. I'm just talking in general, because I think the psychology of that expectation creep, what creeps up as we get closer to the first season under a head coach, that skews our perception. Okay? That skews our perception. And then when you start losing a couple of games, it's, oh my God, you mean Jeff Sims isn't the greatest thing on earth? Oh my God, we're not going to go 12-0. And then you start getting people who start, the natives start getting restless, so to speak, everybody inside the Cornhusker state. And so when you think about it from that perspective, it's like we have to have appropriate expectations. And, drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, all you want.
I refuse.
But I think that when we have these outsized expectations, what happens is you have a lot of people talking, and this is where I'm not talking about you at all right here, Greg. Hand to God, I am not. We have people who talk out of both sides of their mouth, where they have these outsized expectations, and then they also have this leeriness towards a new coach, where you're already seeing some people, I've seen it on social media. You see the Bo references, you see the Frost references about how they were better. And I've seen people comparing Rule to Mike Riley. Oh, he's just a nice guy, but he doesn't win. You can't have it both ways of high expectations while holding the head coach in contempt. You can't, And so what ends up happening, and it happened in 2018 as well, is the fact that we were a bad football team at the end of 2017. We all knew that we were a bad football team. Yet we let expectation creep in as the season got closer, had these outsized expectations for year one under Frost. Then we started 0-6. Now there's two problems right here with that. One, we shouldn't have had the expectation creep in. We should have been content with 6-6, and anything more is just great. But at the same time, we start 0-6 and we just accept it. I think, everybody just kind of accept it. Media, fans, whatever. Here's the thing, though. We weren't a football team at the end of 2017 that was so bad that you would think they would start 0-6 the following year. We were bad, not 0-6 bad. So Frost, that's what I mean when I said earlier that Frost cratered this program even further. Now with Rule, he's still cleaning up from that. And we have people who are already in the media who are already saying, kind of casting doubts upon, his efforts of rebuilding the culture, about how Michigan just wanted it more. I can want to beat Usain Bolt in a 100-meter race worse than anything I've ever wanted in my entire life. Guess what? I am never going to wake up and go run and be faster than him in my entire life, no matter how much I want it.
No, I was going to say something. It's a really violent and negative comment. It was a joke, and I hope it'd be perceived as such. Okay, all right, I'll dress it up in a way. Right. What if you Tanya Harding him?
that doesn't count.
Okay, all right. Well,
you want the bet, mano y mano.
I don't know if there's $1 million on the line.
No, I'm talking about intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about winning a race, making some money.
But the whole thing, it just gets back to expectations. It just gets back to I think there needs to be a standard in place that applies evenly whether you were born in the state of Nebraska or not when you're the head coach at Nebraska. There needs to be standards evenly applied. And I think that we all need to take a step back and realize that Marcus Satterfield is actually coaching his ass off.
Now explain that because
okay, go ahead.
He gets some heat. He gets some vitriol online, which if it's online, he's not seeing it. He doesn't care. Take it with a grain of salt. But there's a lot of negativity, slung his way, and you're on the other side. And we've touched on it a little bit before, but since we have the time, why is your stance that he's doing a hell of a job?
Well, I mean, first off, look at what he has to work with talent-wise.
That's fair.
I mean,
that's like taking me into D-Day.
I mean, don't sell yourself short, man. Nick Saban could be the head coach with Jesus Christ as his offensive coordinator, and I'm not sure if this offense could do any better.
Although,
heard JC would make one good OC.
Can you imagine the Hail Mary passes that would be completed?
Be 100% success rate. Look, Catholic football humor here.
Watch it. We better cut that off. They're going to send us to Notre Dame.
Oh, dang. I don't want to go to South Bend, Indiana. Do you want to go to South Bend?
No, I mean, not saying this, but they'll make us turn this into an Irish podcast or something.
Oh, God. I can't stand that.
All right, moving on. Satterfield, yes.
But, yeah, so, what he has to work with, I mean, it is the Apollo 13 mission trying to get those guys back from space, just looking at what he has to work with. And he ends up with what I thought was a solid game plan against Minnesota, looking back on it in retrospect. At the time, didn't love it, but then when I rewatched it, I saw it was just real small mistakes held us back in that game, in the run game, and obviously the turnovers. But each game, he's really tried to tailor the game plan to what we can do well and what the weaknesses of the defense are. So against Colorado, we were very inside zone heavy. We were trying to dress it up with motions and misdirection, but we were mostly inside zone blocking. Against Minnesota, we were pulling guards and H-backs a lot. We were running a lot of counter. And then against Northern Illinois, we were a little bit more under center, just attacked them more directly. Louisiana Tech, they were kind of an internal inside control team with what they like to do defensively with twists and stunts. So we were getting the ball out on the perimeter with option plays. And then Michigan, that's not a fair assessment to assess the efficacy of the play calling or the game plan against Michigan when you're looking at the talent and disadvantage that we're at. Because, you could have the world's greatest game plan drawn up, and if guys can't get out there and execute the plays, you're not going to do anything. It's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. As much as I love to discuss scheme, it still comes down to athletes.
I want to,
when you look at the drive against Louisiana Tech where Anthony Grant scored, we kept running power O, from an unbalanced formation. When you look at the incorporation of the belly option or some of the speed option plays or the old, 49 or 41 pitch, the old Tom Osborne toss sweep, those things, I mean, we're kind of scrambling to find something that works, but he's leaving no stone unturned. That's one thing that I've always wanted from an offensive coordinator at Nebraska is like the willingness to always try whatever they can to move the football and score points. At some point, we just have to go, hey, we just don't have the dudes to do it. Not yet.
I want to compare and contrast to the best of our ability Minnesota-Michigan games, not the teams. Teams are wildly different. But I remember, since you brought up the Minnesota game, after the Minnesota game, you said, my most positive takeaway is the loss was self-inflicted with mistakes that can be fixed. And then we talk about Michigan, where there weren't we didn't have the ball enough to make a whole lot of self-inflicted mistakes. I think of the 60 minutes of football, they had possession 36 or 37 minutes, something like that. I mean, the Minnesota game, the loss, we can correct those. We can not cough up the ball as often as we did. We can
against an opponent of that caliber.
Right. Michigan, like you said, we need more dudes.
Yeah. All things being equal. Like Minnesota is a good example of if you're in a game against talent that, you're equal to and, you can get by. It comes down to the small mistakes that are going to, decide, the small details are going to, decide the outcome of the game, win or lose. When you're playing against a team that's in a whole other weight class above you, those small details, those small mistakes, they're magnified even further. Because it's like Al Pacino says in Any Given Sunday, 1/2 step too slow, too early, you don't quite catch it. It's a game of inches. So if you're trying to kick out a defensive end on counter as the pulling guard and you're looking at, his near hip, near shoulder to, kick out, get him turned out to the sideline, and he's faster than you and he can squeeze that down block and, throw his hips around, and wrong arm you. Doesn't matter, how well you're trying to execute your technique. That guy's just bigger, faster, and stronger than you.
Yep.
He beat you to your landmark. If you're Turner Corcoran and you're going up against and you're already kind of struggling against, competition, and then you're going up against guys that are going to be NFL draft picks at defensive end, you're going to really struggle, with your kick step and trying to drop your anchor, against this bull rush.
It's going to be a long day for you.
But yeah, those mistakes are going to be even more amplified. That's not to say, like Brendan Hymus, he got schooled against Rashawn Gary in 2018 in that bloodbath when we were up in Ann Arbor. And Brendan Hymus is an NFL left tackle now for the Los Angeles Chargers. That's a case of Brendan Hymus was good against opponents of a similar caliber. Then we were playing teams like Michigan, Ohio State. It's a little bit different. Those small things are magnified. Mm-hmm. Corcoran has struggled against, competition
like
that
competition,
we consider ourselves to be peers with, so it's going to be even more amplified in a game like this. Heinrich Haarberg isn't the greatest passer against Northern Illinois. Oddly enough, he actually completed 7 in a row at one point against Michigan, But there are all those examples where it goes to show how complex of a game it is. It's like the different scheme and talent swirls together. It's like a marble cake. Those lines swirl together. Where one stops and starts, you can't really tell. And so we just got to get better. We got to get better up front.
You just equated the schemes to marble cake, and I can't.
Marble cake swirls.
I know all about marble cake. Marble cake was my wedding cake.
Yeah, marble cake's awesome.
It is, but I wasn't prepared for that analogy, so I bumped it. I'm like, now you just got me thinking about cake.
Fair enough. Cake, it's some good shit.
We
should get better. That's the whole thing. Like, I'm gonna say this first from an immediate standpoint for the rest of this season. Get better week over week. You're playing teams that you're not playing Michigan on the schedule again. So don't let them beat you again this Friday.
Right.
Flush it and move on. I really liked how Rule, had them out in full pads yesterday on Sunday.
I saw that.
Yeah, and, it's a big thing where it's like flush it and move on. Let's get ready for Illinois.
But at the same time, shortened week, so they don't have that traditional Sunday day of rest, day of recovery, because they have to turn the page. It honestly might be the best thing for them.
Yeah, because there's nothing. It's like, I was listening to Travis and Jason Kelsey's podcast when they had Julian Edelman on there. And Edelman was talking. I know Bill Belichick gets a lot of references on our podcast here, Greg. But
you do love you some Billy B.
Edelman was talking about, or they asked Edelman what he thought Belichick would have done last year when they lost to the Raiders because of the ridiculous laterals. And remember the end of game situation, the Patriots hand off to Ramondre Stevenson on a draw. He laterals it to somebody. Then somebody else laterals it to Jacoby Myers. Then he tries a cross-field pass lateral, and it gets picked off by Chandler Jones, and he runs it back for a touchdown, And they were asking Edelman, Belichick's, hard ass, how do you think he addressed the team after that? And he goes, well, that's the thing about Bill, in a game like that, he's going, guys, let's just flush it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, we just got beat. There's nothing to be learned from this, let's move on. Because you're trying to protect confidence at that point,
Right.
When you win, he said when they won, that's when he would hammer guys, in film, being like, oh, you think you're great? I coached LT, you ain't shit, basically. And that really is a great point, because there was a quote that I heard from Joel Klatt on Joel Klatt's podcast earlier, back right when college football started in September. And he said, treat winners like they're losers and losers like they're winners, because losers just need some confidence and winners need to get back to the grindstone.
Need to be humble.
Yep. So I think that it's a good approach just to flush it and move on. Just, you're not going to gain any schematic insight from it, because they didn't really do anything special scheme-wise against us. They kicked our ass with inside zone and this wedge play that they like to run in short yardage. They lined up and just got pressure with 4 a lot of times when they're on defense. Flush it and move on. The only thing that you're going to do is you're going to undermine these guys' confidence more and more if you continue to drill down on what they did wrong against guys that, again, it's like the Usain Bolt analogy.
Yeah.
It's so you just gotta build up, and you got a great opportunity to go on the road and beat a coach who has run his mouth time and time again about our program, to beat a team that we haven't beat since 2019, and to really get yourself at 3-3 heading into the bye.
I would like for nothing more. I will be at that game Friday night. I'm taking my oldest. Took a little selling on my here. I've sold 2 things to my oldest. First of all, I got these tickets during the Louisiana Tech game, and so I sold him on that. And I said, "Buddy, you want to go?" I don't know. I said, "Well, it'll be fun. Let's go." And we're gonna go with another buddy of mine because it's gonna be a late night. But then the other thing that I sold him to do, he said he found 2 quarters in the playground today at school, and I was like, "Buddy, you got a lot of money in your bank account. You have 2 brothers who I think have $1 in your piggy bank, which his is an R2D2 bank, which is cool." I said, "Your brothers only have like $1. Well, you want to split those and give?" He's like, "Well, I'll give 1 to 1, but I'm gonna hold on to the other." I said, "Well, that's not really." So he actually put both quarters into his brother's banks. So those 2 big sales for the day.
There you go.
Illinois is a winnable game.
Yes, it is.
I think they're favored by 3.5. Which is, as they tend to say, is the home field advantage.
And what are they, 1-3 this year? 1-4?
They're 2-3.
Is it Purdue that's, I think, sitting at 1 win?
But Purdue just beat them.
Okay, then I must have read something before the game, before this past weekend's games.
Let's see. Now you got me doubting myself. They are 0-2 in conference. Is Illinois, and they are, they're 2-3 overall. They have a win over Florida Atlantic, which was a 6-point win. They have a 2-point win over Toledo. They have losses to Kansas, Penn State, and Purdue. Purdue beat them 44-19 just this past Saturday. So,
well, I will say this. I know we don't normally do predictions, but I'm not really, there's a long period between when we record following a game and then it's a week between.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say I'm going to close out with a couple of predictions here.
Okay.
The first one is I think we go to Champaign and win a real ugly. I mean, it's beautiful for us, but the casual observer might think it's ugly. I think we win a real, gritty back alley kind of brawl of a game. I'm going to say Nebraska 17, Illinois 13. Secondly, we follow that up with a bye week and then Northwestern and Lincoln and Purdue and Lincoln. I think this is the part of the season that we got to start making a run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to predict that after the bye, we get healthy. I'm going to predict that we're sitting at 5-3, heading up to East Lansing on November 4th with bowl eligibility on the line, and I will be at that game in East Lansing.
There are really Michigan State. I don't say they're
not good either.
No,
I'm telling you, as far-fetched as it sat, when we started the podcast to now at the 41-21 mark, I'm sure that people are thinking what the hell? You just said that we don't have dudes, that we suck, that
but neither do they.
Yeah, neither do they. Okay? Neither do they. Illinois lost a shit ton off last year's squad. Northwestern is Northwestern. Let's just, I think they're still very volatile after everything that happened over the offseason. I think, they beat Minnesota and then they come back, they play Penn State tough, and then Penn State blows them out of the stadium for the rest of the game. And so Purdue, they're still having some problems as well. And so I really think that we could be 5-3 heading into East Lansing if we just continue to play football the way that we need to play to get the most out of what we have to work with on offense and to supplement our defense. Okay. On offense, I do think that we probably need to go back to Jeff Sims at some point. I think that he's more of Haarberg's a good runner too. I think Sims is more of a home run threat with his legs, and Sims is a better passer than Haarberg. So I think we're going to have to, at some point, go back to Sims.
Well, I nothing's etched in stone in the world of podcasts. I was definitely one of those few weeks ago who was saying, only Heinrich and, only ever Heinrich. But unless he can get that throwing motion more over the top, he's got to fix that release point. I'll say this. In the Big Ten, at least in the Big Ten as it is now in 2023, not what it's going to be next year, there are only 3 teams with dudes.
Yep.
And we played one of them. The other one's Ohio State and then Penn State last.
Sorry.
I was just going to say 3 teams out of 14 have dude. Everybody else, Nebraska can play with. Nebraska can hang with. I'll go one step further and say Nebraska will be bowl eligible after their trip to East Lansing.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah.
And then you toss the coin with Maryland, but then you defend the home field against Wisconsin, and then you go on the road and you beat Iowa because they're our bitches. I don't care if we've won 1 out of 8. They're our bitches.
Hey, we established a new order last Black Friday. We restored the order. Here's the thing. If we win in East Lansing to lock up bowl eligibility, I will do a 15-minute coordination overreaction from wherever I am at in East Lansing on my phone.
I will. We can make that happen. You can actually do this StreamYard from digital devices. So we can Drunk fun Haas, I can imagine.
I mean, like I will make that promise to you. Like I don't care if I'm standing in the parking lot, afterwards or at a bar or something. We will do this.
I think we kicked this around more off air a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about next year's game in Lincoln. That's Colorado, Nebraska. And you said, Greg, that's the game you need to get to.
Yes.
Friend of the show, Josh, wants to know if he could come along to that game too.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
And then I think that's the same Josh who you said we need to go out and do the branding together, do the coordination overreaction from the ranch. So
from the cattle camp.
We'll see. From cattle camp. That's good. All right. As always, folks, I'm going to hold my prediction.
I was going to say, I thought you were closing it out.
No, go for it.
No.
I was just going to say that, as always, I will hold on to my prediction until the 5 Heart podcast this week, which should be on Wednesday, just so we can have 24, 48 hours before to get as many eyes on it as possible before I get in the Friday night game. So, Haas, take it away.
I was just going to say this. I think because the Big Ten has a tie-in with the Las Vegas Bowl, and I believe it was Big Ten Pac-12, I believe. All I'll say is how poetic would it be? Us at 6-6, Colorado continues to get their asses humbled, but they're still bowl eligible, 6-6, 7-5. And we have ourselves a good old-fashioned rematch in the bowl game, like the time that we had to have a rematch with Washington in the Holiday Bowl. Let me tell you this, I would be out in Vegas in a heartbeat to be at that game.
I believe every bit of that. And because the airline with which the Raiders Stadium is named after, Allegiant Air, is a smaller airline. It's not, a Delta or United or anything like that. There's a small airport 20 minutes from my house that flies direct to Las Vegas, to and from. So
I see where you're going with this.
I see where I'm going with this.
Have coordination overreaction from a casino hotel after
I was thinking
Colorado.
I've been watching some videos. We might have to do it from the Sphere. Have you seen? Are you up to date with the Sphere in Vegas?
Yeah, I saw some. I don't know how I feel about it.
It's like you're in an IMAX theater that's like massive.
It's almost a little off-putting.
I mean, it could be, but also kind of fun. So, it would be. I'll tell you what. John Johnston over on the 5 Heart podcast has gone on record to say that at the end of the regular season, Nebraska will have a better record than Colorado when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I could see Colorado going 5-7, truly good. I could see Colorado going 6-6 and us going 7-5. A few things break our way, and I mean, since we're still here, and I don't do the 5 Heart, can I just go down the line of how I think the games will shake out the rest of the year?
No.
I got this.
We can say that one for next week.
All right.
Because I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about that, but I'm like, nah, we can say that.
We're going to start out going 1-0 this week.
The most important game on the schedule is the next game on the schedule.
We hit 3 wins. We're halfway to bowl eligibility with 6 to go. And then, damn it, we need to get there. We haven't been to a bowl game since the Obama administration.
You keep bringing that up. It doesn't make anybody feel any better.
It's for emphasis to show how far that we've fallen, how we need to get back, and to make people realize to quit predicting going 12-0, Greg.
I don't know who you're talking about there, Hoss. I was on the record saying 15-0, so I don't know what this 12-0 crap is.
Oh, yeah. Regular season.
All right, well, that'll do it.
I hope that you and your son have a great time in Champaign, and I hope that next week we're doing a overreaction victory edition.
We should. It'd be nice. It'd be a nice change of pace. I mean, I know we just did one last week, but no,
it's
not in Big Ten. Not in Big Ten.
And it's Brett Bielema.
Oh, God, Bert.
I fucking hate that guy.
Same. I hate his whole family.
I mean, like, he pisses me off. Hey, you know what? He could be a decent enough person. I don't know. I don't think he is, based on how his remarks.
He's a turd. Does he wear a hat or does he wear a
I think he has,
visor. I don't know.
no, I think he always has his hair nice and combed.
Oh God, he's a gelled up turd. Burt Bielema, you gelled up turd. Can't wait to see you on Friday and watch Nebraska stomp a mud hole in you.
And walk it dry.
You know, figuratively speaking. All right. That is it for this version of the coordinate. I almost said the fire. No, the coordination overreaction from a buddy, Haarberg, right over here, Greg Mahachko, this guy. We'll see you next time around where we'll be celebrating a Nebraska victory. So until then, go Big Red.
Win the damn game. Go 1-0.